What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to the Versus series. This is the series where I take two similar elements, break down their stats, put them side by side to determine which one is better. In today's episode, we're going to be covering the burst tactical rifles in Black Ops 4 multiplayer, and this is the ABR versus the Swordfish. Starting it off with some of the more important stats, we've got the number of shots it takes to kill. The ABR 223 will kill in 4 to 5 shots, whereas the Swordfish actually takes an extra bullet to kill, so it'll kill in 5 to 6 shots. Our rate of fire within the burst, on the other hand, is definitely slower with the ABR. It fires a 3-round burst at 800 rounds per minute, whereas the Swordfish fires a 4-round burst at roughly 1,000 rounds per minute. Keeping in mind these are hand-tested values, and with hand testing, it is quite difficult to get the exact fire rate for a burst weapon. Now, one of the most important stats with a burst weapon is the burst delay. So this is the amount of time it takes between each burst, and with the ABR, we get a burst delay of 125 milliseconds, whereas the Swordfish is clearly slower at 160 milliseconds. What this means is generally the ABR is going to be a bit more forgiving if you have to end up taking an extra burst to get a kill, since you can get that next burst out a little bit faster. This brings us to our statistical minimum time to kill, and with the ABR, we get a time to kill up close of 350 milliseconds, whereas at longer ranges, it'll be 425 milliseconds. And with the Swordfish, it's a little bit slower. Up close, you get a statistical time to kill of 400 milliseconds, and then at longer ranges, it's going to take 460 milliseconds. So the time to kill on the Swordfish is a little bit slower than the ABR, and this is mainly due to that burst delay, because with both of them, without attachments, it will take you 2 bursts to get a kill. However, with the Swordfish, we have access to the high caliber attachment, which gives us a time to kill potential of just 180 milliseconds, which is one of the fastest time to kill values in the entire game. Of course, with that, you do have to be very precise with your shots. You can't be missing a single bullet within a burst, and at least one of those bullets has to hit the head. But you do get an amazing time to kill potential with the Swordfish that you simply can't get with the ABR. This brings us to our ranges, and as you can see here, the ABR's 4-shot kill range extends out to 37.5 meters, which is pretty respectable, and you can definitely keep your fights within that range quite easily. But it's not quite as long as the Swordfish's 5-shot kill range, which extends all the way out to 50 meters, which will be the vast majority of your gunfights, unless you're actively setting yourself up on a really long line of sight. So in the range department, the Swordfish definitely has the advantage, but I will say that the ABR's range isn't terrible by any means. As for recoil, we definitely see a difference between these two. With the ABR, it does recenter between each burst, which is really nice, but there is a little bit of recoil with every burst that you fire. So those 3 bullets that come out of that burst, they don't all go in the exact same hole. There is a little bit of recoil involved there. Now, at close to mid ranges, this shouldn't be an issue for you at all. This is really only going to affect your ability to hit those shots at really long ranges, because it is still very limited recoil. With the Swordfish, on the other hand, you can see that this thing is pinpoint accurate. Almost all of the bullets in the burst go into the same hole. You can easily pick people off across the map if they're head glitching some piece of cover. So once again, the Swordfish definitely comes out on top here, but also once again, it's not like the ABR has horrible recoil properties. It's just not as good as the Swordfish. Moving on to our magazine capacity, both of these have a standard magazine capacity of 36 rounds, which is great. This means you will get 12 bursts between each reload for the ABR, and you'll get 9 bursts between reloads with the Swordfish. With both of these guns though, we can increase this value. For the ABR with extended mags, we can bump this up to 48 rounds, which is really nice. And with the Swordfish, we have access to hybrid mags, which actually allows us to take our magazine capacity all the way up to 50 rounds, which is really good, especially when you consider the fact that hybrid mags will also reduce your reload time, which we'll look at in just a couple seconds here. As for our total starting ammo, once again, the base total starting ammo is going to be the same for these at 108 rounds, whereas with extended mags, we get 144 rounds with the ABR, and with hybrid mags, we get 150 rounds with the Swordfish. This brings us to our reload time, which is a little bit on the slow side for both of these when you compare them to like assault rifles, for instance. The ABR will reload in 1.67 seconds, which isn't absolutely horrible, but you'll definitely notice that it's a bit on the slow side. And with the Swordfish, it is even slower at 1.92 seconds. Like I said though, we do have the option to reduce that reload time for the Swordfish down to 1.32 seconds if we're using hybrid mags, which is really nice, and that is a very noticeable reduction to our reload time. So now that we have that covered, let's move into some handling and mobility stats. First up, we have our aim down sight time, which is 275 milliseconds with the ABR and 300 milliseconds with the Swordfish. So the ABR is definitely a bit faster in this department. It is noticeably faster. But with both of these, we have the option to use the quick draw attachment, and just a single quick draw attachment will reduce both of their aim down sight time down to 250 milliseconds, which is a bigger benefit for the Swordfish. But also with the Swordfish, we do have the option for quick draw 2, which will reduce our aim down sight time all the way down to 150 milliseconds, which is noticeably faster than all of the SMGs in this game. So when it comes to this, the ABR is definitely better if you're not looking at attachments, but the Swordfish does have better potential if you start adding attachments onto it. As for our sprint out times, it's actually a pretty similar story here. The ABR gets a slightly faster sprint out time at 260 milliseconds, whereas the Swordfish is going to be 300 milliseconds. Our movement speed is going to be the same for both of these, and standard for tactical rifles at 95%, and same thing goes with our base aim down sight strafe speed. They're both standard for the tactical rifles at 42.5%. It's important to note, though, that the ABR does have access to stock attachments, actually both of the stock attachments, and stock 1 will bump your aim down sight strafe speed all the way up to 66%, whereas stock 2 will give you a slight boost from there up to 72%. And this I find to be very helpful for that left stick aiming, so you can adjust your shot a little bit by strafing side to side rather than actually moving your aim. So I would actually say having the ability to have stock is a pretty big upside for the ABR. So those are the main stats I wanted to look at, but now let's have a look at the attachment selection that we have for these two different guns. And in this department, looking at the ABR, the highlights here are going to be that stock attachment. Like I said, that is very helpful with a burst gun, in my opinion. It is nice to have quick draw as well, even though we don't get as much of a benefit as quick draw on the Swordfish. And the grip attachment can be nice to help with that recoil a little bit, since it does have a bit more recoil than the Swordfish. On the other side of things, when we're looking at the Swordfish, though, we do have that ability for a near instant aim down sight time by using both of the quick draw attachments. We have access to the hybrid mag attachment, which is superior to the extended mag attachment on the ABR, since it also helps with reload time. And also, high caliber is what really sets this over the edge, and I would say the Swordfish definitely has better attachments simply because it has that high caliber attachment, which will allow you to get a one burst kill, whereas with the ABR, it is literally impossible to get a one burst kill on a full health enemy in core game modes. I also want to have a quick look at the operator mods for these, since they both have operator mods. With the ABR, we have the repeater operator mod, which will make it so your burst delay decreases as you continue to fire, and it also allows you to hold down the trigger and your gun will keep bursting, rather than having to tap every single time you want to burst. This is a fun operator mod to use, but I do want to be very clear, this only really helps if you're either inaccurate and missing a lot of bursts, or if you're challenging multiple enemies, and therefore you're going to need several bursts in order to deal with everybody that's currently in front of you. With the ABR, you should be killing in the first two bursts, and the repeater does not help with those first two bursts. It only starts kicking in on the third burst. As for the Swordfish, its operator mod is the Pentaburst, and this allows you to fire a 5-round burst rather than just a 4-round burst, and therefore you can now get a 1-burst kill to the body with the Swordfish. You don't need to run high caliber and hit a headshot, you can just go for body shots, and as long as every bullet hits within 50 meters, you can get a 1-burst kill. This, in my opinion, is much more valuable than the operator mod on the ABR, and therefore, once again, I'm going to give it to the Swordfish here. It definitely has the advantage in this department. So at the end of the day, after looking at all of the stats and the attachments and putting these two guns side by side, I'm going to say that statistically speaking, the Swordfish is the superior burst gun. It's the only one of the two that has two different options to get a 1-burst kill, either high caliber or the Pentaburst operator mod, whereas the ABR, like I said, nothing you can do to it will give you a 1-burst kill. And to top that all off, it's just got better attachments in general, it's more accurate so you can pick people off at longer ranges. Speaking of ranges, it does have a longer range value for its maximum damage range, and therefore I just consider it to be better overall. Having said that, I think there is definitely still a place for the ABR in this game. I see the ABR as a better close to mid-range sort of a burst gun that is more forgiving, so if you are firing multiple bursts and you miss a burst or two, the ABR is much more forgiving than the Swordfish, and also it doesn't rely on attachments nearly as much as the Swordfish. So if you're looking for that all-around sort of close to mid-range burst gun with that added mobility of having the stock attachment especially, the ABR is a great choice, and I think it is an underrated gun in its current state. But of course, this is where I want to hear from you guys. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about the ABR versus the Swordfish? Do you think the ABR is better? Do you think the Swordfish is better? Just let me know your opinion and why. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.